got some stories about, it was your cousin that went to school here?
Cousin and brother.
Okay, I can tell some stories.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine as far as you want to. My cousin Mike Twitchell and my brother Walt Lockie were here in the early 90s and rode drums for Northwest Community College, and paid their way getting bucked off and being crash test dummies for Ike Sankey. I think that's all he really wanted the rodeo cowboys for, was just to try out the broncs. And it was really concerned. Walt said he was hung up one time out at the practice arena, and Ike was more concerned that he was dragging underneath the horse and the horse may hurt his foot, versus Walt getting hung up and getting drug underneath the bronc. So it was kind of a pecking order right away. My name's John Lockie. Tara is on a conference call, my partner in crime on this, and she'll be here in a little bit. I may not get up and walk around a whole bunch. I would like to say it was in a great spectacular wreck, but I fell down. Yeah, skiing with my daughter blew my knee out. I'm originally from eastern Montana. The place was between Miles City and Jordan and God's country, where the grass is short and so is the rain. But I grew up on a ranch that we raised, have quite a bit of sheep, cattle, and small grains. I've been with the crop insurance outfit for about 6 years now, so kind of moving along.
So are you related to Jason Twitchell?
Yep, Jason is from Wolf Point. It was a pretty big family. It splits off like our great grandparents, someplace up in there, and then scatters out from there. So
go back.
Yeah, so we are related.
I could tell these stories about Jason.
I could too. You know, where do you want to start? We're not going to get a lot of crop insurance this time. The risk management agency is the one that regulates federal crop insurance. We don't sell it. You have agents that sell it. There are about 16 different companies that do business and sell crop insurance, and they all have to offer it at the same price. So you're not going to get, if you go to Farm Bureau or Rain and Hail or RCIS or any one of the other companies, the price is the same. They compete on service. You know, there's most producers participate in crop insurance in some way, shape, or form if you are a traditional row crop producer, you're involved in it, but not as many ranchers are involved in crop insurance, and that's why we've got some products that we'll talk about that are more for ranchers. Our regional office is in Billings, and we take care of Wyoming, Montana, and the Dakotas. Wyoming, we don't spend as much time down here because you guys don't have the problems that North Dakota does. North Dakota has rain, and then they get prevented from planting, and we spend an exorbitant amount of time in North Dakota, and for that matter in eastern South Dakota too. The 5 areas of risk, you know, if you've gone around and talked to everybody in the last little bit, these are, you know, areas that you talk about quite a bit, whether it's marketing, when you're trying to turn what you produce into money, financial, getting a loan to be able to put that crop in the ground, any legal, I just sat through the estate planning one, that legal type of thing, human interaction, whether or not you get bucked off or your four-wheeler runs you over, and then production risk as well is actually getting that crop off the ground. You know, turning the production into revenue is marketing, of course, forward contracting, that type of thing, looking at futures options. We'll talk in a little bit about the livestock risk protection, which is a government subsidized put. You know, the legal, very broad range. It could be anything from trespass issues, bankruptcy issues, any of those type of things. You know, really, I can't speak to that. I'm not a lawyer, thank goodness. So that's who you need to really have a lawyer probably help you with that as much as anything. Production, this is what we know. We know how to try to manage it, getting the crop off the ground. What we have to do, there's things that if we can manage, we try to. For insects, disease, weather, we always are kind of at the whim of that. And we'll talk about some of those production risk things that we can do. Financial, whether it's debt capital, cash flow, that type of a thing. Lending, borrowing, trying to get what your credit score is so that you're working it out with the banker, all that type of thing. Record keeping is a huge one as well. And then human risk. We've all got human risk if you're doing anything with livestock or around equipment. So trying to just balance your way across and then have that safety net underneath you is what we're looking at, and then kind of forward planning. Is that, you know, is what you're designing going to help you out, or is this looking a little rickety as far as getting across the stream? There you can get a bunch of farm risk plans at this website as well, provided by RMA. So some stuff that you may want to look at. We have what they call the summary of business. And this, I'm not expecting everybody to read this, but if you'd like to look at it, we can go through it each part. But these are the crops that are insured in the state of Wyoming. We have a kind of an interesting spin on insurance, which is adjusted gross revenue light. It is whole farm insurance, and it's your bottom line. It's revenue stream insurance. But it is complicated, and it is kind of after the fact. It's not an immediate type of payment, and it's all based off your Schedule F insurance. And there's a gigantic 2 policies in the state of Wyoming, so not used a lot. But alfalfa seed, barley, corn, dry beans, dry peas, forage production, which is putting up hay. And there is the different types of that. Forage seeding, which is in the first year of forage production. Millet, your nursery crops, oats, pasture rangeland forage, potatoes, sugar beets, sunflowers, and wheat. Grand total for the state of Wyoming, there were 5,500 policies. Of those, that was what were sold, that earned their premium. These are the ones that actually, there was 2,500 of them that had a crop in the ground, and 1,100 of them were indemnified. They insured 1.2 million acres at $140 million in liability, and were indemnified 18.1 million, a loss ratio of right at $1. And that's what we're trying to run the crop insurance program is we call it a loss ratio. For every $1 that you pay in premium, we pay out $1 in indemnity. When you look at pasture rangeland forage, the drought across, there were 127 policies across the state that earned their premium. We insured 770,000 acres and paid out $3.3 million. The liability was $4.8 million, and we paid $3.3, a loss ratio of just short of $4. For every $1 that came in, we paid out $4 for that drought insurance in the state of Wyoming. When we'll get into the weeds a little bit on the pasture rangeland forage, any of you guys tried that at all? You weren't part of the 127 then. I know you guys have dealt with it quite a bit. Pasture rangeland forage, it was mandated by Congress to have a rangeland insurance in the 2002 ARPA bill, Ag Risk Protection Act bill. It's very, very difficult to come up with something to insure grass, because I may overgraze, you leave more than half. I have cattle that are really too big, and they're trying to, they're overgrazing. I got lighter weight cattle. It's just trying to find out what that proxy is. If we do it by calf size, or we do it by any other like a clipping method to find out what forage matter is out there. So all the challenges from different type of species of grass, the timing of when it's growing. They're trying to do this as a blanket across the country. Very different in North Carolina than in Wyoming, obviously. Your range management practices, and there's no real price that's announced, and of course, you're continually harvesting that grass. So what they've done is come up with 2 different types that they're piloting at this point: a Rainfall Index and a Vegetation Index. Wyoming has the Vegetation Index. It's based on a grid, not on your individual operation. So it's not, if you're on 10,000 acres, the grid is 4.8 by 4.8 miles for the Vegetation Index. And then instead of being just the growing season, it's broke up into, in Wyoming, a 3-month interval. This is where it's available currently across the country. We've moved some things around. South Dakota was a Vegetation Index last year, along with Nebraska, and they've moved those to a Rainfall Index. That's all the blue. They tried Vegetation Index on the eastern seaboard, but they had trees. It didn't work over there. And when a tree is green, it looks like it's green, whether or not the grass is dead underneath. So Wyoming's had a Vegetation Index for a few years now, and varying degrees. Some people like it, some people don't, and it's just a tool to take a chance and look at. The difference of the intervals It allows you to customize what you feel is the best fit for your operation, whether or not you are, April, May, June, you think, well, I gotta have it in that early spring, or you wanna go July, August, September to when that grass is hardening up and really maturing. As we found out, it's kind of better into that later time period when it's maturing, when you're going to be harvesting that, the cow's gonna be harvesting that grass for you. A lot of regional variation that way. It's April, May, June, but then also May, June, July. You can't double insure the months, but it allows you that flexibility to choose when it's right for your operation. And the index intervals are exclusive so that they're not bleeding over to the next one and saying, well, you were really high this time, but so that's going to affect you later on. It's just looking at that interval against the history of that individual interval. You can insure from 90 to down to 70%. It's that which is consistent with other programs. What's not consistent with this one is that you can still carry catastrophic risk protection coverage through the FSA. If you because we do not, or pardon me, CAT's not covered, but you can carry it with NAP. I said that backwards. Normally we have a catastrophic coverage which is in the 65% or lower range for most crops. Because this is a pilot, we're not offering it at that low level. That way you do not have to carry the coverage. This is allowing then FSA to continue to allow you to purchase a NAP policy. Non-insured assistance program, you can carry that on all your acres, all your grass in a county, costs you $250. And so you're you're double insured if you pick up PRF as well. You're double insured and could be potentially doubly indemnified if both of them trigger. And this is the only one that does that. You won't see it for anything else.
It's $250 per crop.
But I'm talking grass.
Okay.
$250 per crop per county. So if you're in 2 different counties on your grassland, you'd have $250 per county. But in this case, it's $250. If you're all in one county, you can cover your whole place for $250. Dates are really important in the government. If you miss it, you're done. The sales closing date for 2013 was November 15th, 2012. So this is something to think about for next year. You can't get into it at this point. You're also going to report your acres on November 15th, and the termination date is there as well. And if there's any contract change, anything that comes up different for this policy, it would have to be done by the 31st of August. The rainfall, you guys, nobody's from Montana, you are down in Wyoming now full-time, aren't you, Boyd? So
No, we're still back and forth.
okay. Anybody else cross over a little bit into Montana? Montana's got a rainfall index versus the vegetation index. It is not just the rain that's on your place. There's not necessarily a data collection point on your grid or on your place. It is not your rain gauge in your yard. It is what is coming from the Climate Prediction Center of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and they're not going to tell you where those data collection points are because they do not want anyone writing out and putting their hat over top of the rain gauge and then going, oh, hey, it didn't rain. So they're not going to tell you where those are at, even though I get phone calls every time an interval comes out. Every single time somebody calls in, wow, they said it was X in my grid and I didn't get anywhere near that. Where in the is that rain gauge? I don't know either. It's through this other government agency and I don't have it. During any given day, there's about 8,000 data collection points across the country. As a minimum, most of the time they're up 25,000 on any given day. They've got a calculated normal since 1948, all the way through the present, and it's single peril, it's just moisture. You can have lots of moisture in a fire, and they're just going to look at whether or not you've got what your average or what your you've selected your coverage at for rainfall. Those are the rainfall indexes. Those are the time periods, and starts in January and goes through December. Gridded information, minimum of 6,000. Again, NOAA does not have a weather station in every grid. And then it's how they come up with the data. It's an interpolation, which is a mathematical formula of taking points that are further away to assign a value across the grid. They weight the ones that are closer heavier, the ones that are further out less. They also back in and try to truth verify this with information that comes from NEXRAD radar and some satellite imagery as well. It doesn't necessarily, it depends on where you're at. And the grids are bigger on rainfall. They call it a 0.25 degree grid, which starts at the equator and then spreads out up over top the map and the globe. And by the time it gets into the northern reaches of Montana, it's 11 miles east to west and 18 miles north to south. In Texas, it's about 11 by 11. And your rainfall in that period, you could be on a dry side of the grid, and the other side of the grid gets rain, and it doesn't trigger an indemnity for you, even though you had less than you expected for rain. It's a group risk. It's everybody in the grid, not just your operation. The same thing, group risk for the Vegetation Index. It's smaller, 4.8 by 4.8, but it is a satellite that reads whether or not it's green. The vegetation, it's how the ultraviolet light is either being absorbed or reflected by healthy or unhealthy vegetation. The history is shorter. Obviously, we didn't have a lot of satellites in the air in the 40s and 50s that were reading this vegetation index, so it's only since 1989. Again, it's very critical to run through the history. Make sure that you know what you're getting into and what the history showed. If you feel in 2002 it was very dry, and you look at the history and it says, well, it was really green, this may not be the best choice for you. And no one's going to know that. You can go talk to your crop insurance agent, and they can say, this is what I think is the best fit for your operation, but they don't know the operation as well as you do. You need to crunch those numbers, and I'll show you how to get to that history. It starts January and goes through December as well. In Wyoming, we blacked out the winter months. There's not a lot of stuff growing at this time of year in Wyoming, so there's no sense putting your dollars in this time of year. We had, when we first brought it out in South Dakota, people were putting their dollars in the winter as more of a gamble. They figured out, they just ran the numbers, see how many times they get paid in each interval, and well, it's easier than going to Deadwood. I don't have to drive. I can just do it all right here with my crop insurance agent. So we said, well, we're going to limit that, not allow that to happen. How it happens, healthy vegetation absorbs more visible and reflects more infrared, and vice versa for healthy or sparse. The NDVI value is a maximum NDVI during each 14-day period. Satellite goes over constantly. It's not every 2 weeks. It goes over constantly. But then they compile it every 2 weeks, and they got to throw out stuff if there's if it's hazy, they can't really see what it is, so they couldn't get a clear reading on it. They got to throw some of those out so they can get the NDVI for that 2-week period. They're not trying to get just the maximum to say, well, all they're going to take is just the highest readings they have. They're just getting the clearest pictures possible. There's also a total loss factor that's involved with the BI, where they're knowing full well that you're going to have to destock before you get to zero vegetation on your grid. If you get to zero vegetation, there's nothing out there. You're going to have to pull the cattle off. So in this case, they're going to pay you a full indemnity at 30% of normal, which is, again, different. It's a little more expensive because of it, but it's going to pay you a full indemnity, and then your indemnities increase from 90 down to 30 instead of just the straight line, which would have been there. Looking at how things went this year, obviously the drought was pretty terrible. This is a map that our computer guy did up for me. This is the April, May, June time period. Definitely see the drought there. What you're going to notice is, like down the Bighorns, that's going to stay kind of green because of trees. Evergreen is evergreen. So it's something that you have to realize if you're trying to, and you can insure, if you have a federal grazing permit up in the forest, you can insure that ground because you have the right to use it. But you may want to look at it. If it's plumb full of trees, it may not trigger for you. So this is April, May, June, May, June, July, June, July, August. There, I just fished around. You got into Corner and Natrona County and stuff, just clicked on a couple to see what they were at. And they're single-digit NDVI readings, so pretty much nothing out there. Wouldn't be any surprise to anyone. July, August, September, same thing. But this is where then the loss ratio was $4. So for every dollar that came in, we paid out $4. August through October, a little bit of improvement down in the southwest. Obviously the drought in South Dakota is as bad as it is over here. That just gives you, and that's where the drought's at. That's what pays $350 or $400 or more if you get into Colorado. Rainfall Index, just show you some pictures how this works. Rainfall Index, not necessarily a silver bullet either, but Larry said there's some people say, well, rainfall works better. I think it's just because the grass is greener on the other side of the fence. We all think the grass is always better over there. The drought started kind of eastern Montana. The northern part of Montana didn't have a bad drought this year. But you can see it start moving in as they go along. And then this area, you get into the southeastern corner, Carter County, Fallon County, this is where there's not a lot of people down there. There's not a lot of data collection points down there. And a bit of a rain in one spot could throw you out and you wouldn't get an indemnity. And that's something you have to think about for your operation. Rainfall over the country, it's pretty much red all the way across the country. This is how you find some of the information if you're interested. The RMA website is rma.usda.gov. Down here under the quick links is rainfall and vegetation indices. They just changed the entire look of the website, so we had to chase that all down. Once you go in there, you can get your Montana rainfall, vegetation if you're in Wyoming, and you can click on pasture, rangeland, and forage. And then there's these tools will come up. It'll be a big map and you can start zeroing in. I just chose a point arbitrarily, kind of triangulated outside of down here south of Cody. And you keep zooming in so you can look at, it'll give you what your grid number is, where it is by lat longe, and then you can click over here for your decision support tool to tell you what the history has been. And that's this one here. The decision support tool will give you, you can change the start and end date for this graph to show you what the history looks like. I just filled it in from '89, which is the earliest we had information. And then this is where you can start putting in your intended use. Whether it's grazing or hay ground, you're going to pay a little more for insurance on hay ground than you would grazing. You do not have to insure all your acres. If you want to just give it a shot and try it on a 100-acre hay field or something, you can do that. You can select your coverage level. I showed before, between 70 and 90%. Your productivity factor can be up to 150%. And that idea is that they'll give you the county base value. But you're going to say, well, but my ground is worth more to me than what they say the county base value is. So I can say, I want 150% of that. Your insurable interest is, 100% interest. How many acres you can insure, and then you can look on your sample year and what it would trigger. Now this, this is this same grid. See a 14.9% reading July, September of this year, 22% June through August. If you back up, I guess right here, 2002, 4.1, 2.9, 4.8. So pretty much nothing. So when you start plugging in what you want to use it for, I chose grazing, 90% coverage. I left the productivity factor at 100. Insurable acres, easy figure, I said 5,000 acres and use this year. When you do percent of value here to find out what it would have paid, it's not like you put in 300 acres here and then 4,700. You do, it's all by percentage. So I did 35% of my acres I wanted to insure in this time period and 65% in that time period. Again, I do not have to insure 100%. I could have chose 20% there and 20% in the other time and leave the other 60% alone. And this runs the figures for 2012, pardon me. It gives you what your county base value is for Park County, $8.72 for grazing ground. That coverage is $39,000. It costs, the total premium is $8,000, but the government pays $4,100 of that. So it cost me $4,000, but my indemnities across that same time period were $28,000. So against a $4,000 insurance policy, I netted $28,000. I didn't. This is hypothetical. But that's something. It's a tool in the toolbox of something that you may want to look at. the ship has sailed for 2013, but if you keep in contact and keep looking at it, it might be something that would be beneficial. I ran the numbers. I've got a small place outside of Billings. It's irrigated, so I didn't really bother picking up insurance. But I ran the numbers for the last 20 years, using the same time period, not cherry picking and saying, oh, it was dry this time period, I'll move it. Just saying in the same time period. And over that time, on the investment of about $6,000, it would have returned about $22,000. And that's what the idea is in crop insurance. It is not to make you more than whole or be a profit source. It is to keep you in business till next year. Another one we'll talk about is livestock insurance. There's been some other people talk about it in the last couple of days. There's fact sheets sitting right here on some of these products. Livestock risk protection, livestock gross margin. You can pass them out, that's fine. There's others sitting out over on our booth table over there.
I'm not completely understanding what you did there.
Which one?
We
Okay.
run in a valley.
Okay.
It's irrigated, so it would be green, but there's pasture land to the sides. It takes, when you sign up your acres, you like plot those acres.
Mm-hmm. I'll get back to the map over here.
So like the dryland acres beside the hayfield that you still use for grazing, you could insure.
Yes,
Because the hayfield's gonna be green.
you can insure the hayfield, or you could insure the grazing ground. If you have, I'll wobble my way over here. On the gridded information, if the grid sits like this,
Are all the grids the same size and
Yep.
how big are they?
they're 4.8 by 4.8 miles. And in your operation is, and they're not on the section line, these grids are. And if your place happens to sit on the section line and goes like this, and this portion over here is your hay field and the rest of it's grazing, you can choose, now, and each one of them graded separately, each have an individual number. What's nice about it is you can choose one point, this one, this one, this one over here, or this one over here, as long as it's contiguous. You can insure all, I'll use 5,000 acres. You can insure all 5,000 acres and just choose this one point, because you decided that one is more representative, the history is more representative of your operation through time. You can insure your grazing ground if it's 100 acre, hayfield, 100 acre hayfield, different than your other 4,900 acres of grazing. And you can choose to say, okay, this is my hay ground, and I'm gonna pick this point right here because it's contiguous, it crosses. And I can just pick that one right there and be paid an indemnity or not paid an indemnity because of how it triggers there. Or if I've got 20 acres here and 80 acres here, I can insure these 20 acres in this grid and these 80 acres in this grid. I can also insure, as it's split up, the other 4,900, I can split them up by each grid if I want to, but for ease and simplicity, most people are doing one point. Now, if you've got these acres and then you've got another hayfield that's up over here, you're not gonna be able to insure that with this whole block. You'd have to insure that one separately because it's not contiguous. But if you had one that went here all the way up, because these two pieces are in the same grid, you could draw them all together and insure them all in one spot.
And when you're saying you're picking the one point, that means that that's the piece of that grid that the satellite looks at? Or
Nope, the satellite's looking at all these grids. These are what the grids look like on the map.
Right.
It's looking at all of them, and it's a pixel that they're reading. And it's got, that says what this pixel is saying, it's either healthy vegetation or unhealthy vegetation because of the absorbing of the ultraviolet and that type of stuff. So that, if they're all rated exactly the same, or individually, pardon me, they're all individually rated, so that this one might have more of a loss and it's got a different rate than the one beside it. So that might be the difference of what you want to do for your operation. It also doesn't matter county line. If the county line cuts across like that, you can then choose to say, well, I don't wanna be in Park County, I wanna be in Carbon County because of how they lie. And so you can put them over here and draw these acres from Park County that are contiguous and insure them all in Carbon County. Does that make sense? Good question, though. That's more input than I get from a lot of people when they ask questions. It is kind of complicated, but it gives you a lot of flexibility, but with flexibility comes that complexity. But that's why I encourage a person, and when you get to this, this screen, when you're looking at where your operation is, that's a heck of a map. I really like this map, and then you can go, well, I'm here and over here, and then you can toggle between all this information and just leave the map and get to the satellite information, and it'll zoom in quite a ways, and then that way you can really tell, well, I'm not sure which side I'm on over here, which am I in this grid or in that grid, and then you can zoom in and really tell where you're at through that option.
So depending on the vegetative index, depending on, you know, like if you had a Forest Service permit or a BLM permit where they're making you rest a pasture for a year, wouldn't that throw it off? Depending on how it was looking at that specific grid, if
No.
your whole pasture was in that one grid and you didn't graze it.
It can, but what it normally is, or what it is it normal for that to be part of the rotation? Is it normal that every third year or every fourth year, whatever it is, they make you rest a pasture that's right there? That's the same thing of your hay ground that's in that grid that is sub-irrigated, for whatever reason, or you can irrigate it. It's normal for that little spot to be green. If there's a change of cropping, if you suddenly have a neighbor that breaks up a chunk of ground, starts planting a row crop that will be green at a different time of year than what would be your grass, then you may want to look at, is this going to change what the NDVI averages are over time? You can see some of that happening where they start putting in either wheel lines or center pivots or something that could pop be green later on where it would normally have dried out. But 4.8 by 4.8, you're 15 sections, roughly. And if you have 15 sections and you'll have one wheel line that goes in, is that enough green that's gonna skew the data? Probably not. But something to think about, though. I'll wobble myself back over here and sit back down. Questions? I've completely baffled you and you don't have anything?
I was looking at some data that they were given on crop insurance with the big indemnities they paid out over, I'm assuming, most of the United States this year. Is the rates going up?
They will be factored in over time. It won't jump on this year. It'll be factored in over time if we're still here over time. That's another question I can't answer, and we won't know. We've had everything talked about that will be on, they called it be sequestered or, basically be put on hiatus by the office or by whoever. So we'll have to take time out, and who knows what happens. Life is a little flexible right now. I have to argue with my father-in-law when he said several times, you need a government job, it's stable, it'll be there. He didn't count on 2012-13, so. Something to think about. And if you want to run the numbers, I know that your crop insurance agents all over, I can't advocate you go to one or the other. That's something we do not do. There's a tool that you can look at. There are people that do this every day in how.
So you have to sign up before the 15th of November.
Correct.
And then you gotta go talk to them.
You would sign up with them by the 15th of October. And line out what your acreage report is, how many acres you have in Carbon or Park County or Bighorn County or wherever you're at. You're going to, you have to have all that stuff lined out by the 15th of November.
You do that on the RMA website here?
So all of that has to be done. That's your dead cutoff.
That's the dead cutoff.
Okay.
Yeah, and it is also, it's pay to play as well. Yes, you're paying your premium up front.
I think,
They changed?
I think they bill.
Okay, so all right, so it's not the same as LRP then.
No, they bill for.
Okay, so yeah, but anyway, you have to have it signed up by the 15th of November. And and reported your acres, and you want to give yourself time, because they're going to require you to report down to what they call the CLU, or the Common Land Unit. So you've got section, township, range, farm, tract, and field number that you have to report. And it can get complicated. We've had some conversations in some spots because Wyoming runs on a lot of BLM, a lot of Forest Service. They do not necessarily have down to that level reporting, but FSA has guaranteed us that they will have it done. So if you go in earlier, if you wait until the 15th, you're going to get what you get. But if you can get in there earlier and start planning and spend some time looking at these tools and making some decisions and backing up and go, well, this grid 57568 is showing me this, but 57567 is showing me something different. And if I'm in both of them, which one do I want to use as my point of reference? Or do I want to split them up? Mostly for ease, you probably want to have them bunched up for ease, but I'm not, you can do it however you want to. So I answer questions, we'll be here for a while.
Well, I got one more question.
You bet.
If you're leasing somebody's place,
Mm-hmm.
you can still sign up this
Yep.
insurance.
Yep, and it doesn't have to be a real formal lease agreement. You're leasing my place. Really have the reasonable expectation. You've leased from me for a long time. We've never had anything more than a handshake. We can scribble on the back of an envelope. You have the reasonable expectation. But you also can, November 15th, sign up for it because you've always leased my place and you have the reasonable expectation that you're going to lease my place. And then come New Year's Eve, you and I get in a Lockhorn event and no, you're done, you're off. Well, you signed up on November 15th. You've still got insurance on my place and you can be indemnified off that. You could actually sell it to me as well, but probably if you get into a situation where you lost a lease, we're probably not on speaking terms anymore. But you would still have an insurance on that place, even though you don't have cattle or be able to hay it or anything, and could receive an indemnity upon it. Because at the time of sales closing, it was, again, reasonably expected that you would have use of that ground. We've seen that a couple times happen in the last little while.
So on the vegetative index, where those big fires went through, and I'm thinking Montana, what does that end up doing?
It doesn't do anything in Montana because it's not a vegetation index, it's a rainfall index.
If I were to shift that to Wyoming.
In Wyoming, it's black, so it's a 0 NDVI reading at that first time. But you know how a lot of times happens, it didn't happen this year. A lot of times it burns all off, and then it's a little bit of rain that comes with it, and you get an immediate hyper green response, and it's this tall, but it's really, really green. And it could throw you out and say, well, you have normal NDVI reading or above normal NDVI reading, no indemnity due. There's no dispensation taken for it's not grazable. It's not saying, well, it's all cheatgrass, nothing's going to eat it. It's all leafy spurge or something. It's just what's green. It's not John Deere tractors. They will not read if you have green tin on the roof of your barn, it's not going to read that because it has to be vegetation of some sort.
So do you think this was designed for a fire policy at all, or is
No.
it? Okay.
No, it takes it in consideration because it is MPCI and would pay you in that case. But rainfall, it's a single peril. It's only rainfall. You can have all the rain in the world and have a big fire come through, and you don't get an indemnity, even though you can't graze it, because it is just paying you on rainfall. Switching a little bit of gears, but kind of on the same idea. If it's non-traditional, it's not talking barley or alfalfa or corn. Livestock insurance, we've had, if you were around earlier, there's people talking about it. It's essentially on the livestock risk protection, it is a government subsidized put. They pay 13% of the premium. It's nice, the idea that you do not have to have a 50,000 pound load. It is down to, if you want to insure one head, or up to 2,000 head, 1,000 per cycle. We'll get to it, a specific coverage endorsement length. You can have 1,000 head per twice a year, so up to 2,000 head. It doesn't protect against death loss. It is just a price insurance and is not the price that you receive on your cattle live locally. If you sold to an order buyer that came in and took possession of them and drove out with them, and it was under what you expected and the board stayed high, you don't get an indemnity. But the vice versa has happened. You bought the policy, the market went low, and they were in a kind of a sweetheart deal, sold for above the market. You get above the market price, you put that in your pocket, and you get the indemnity as well. So that can happen. I've got some examples as we go along here. We can go through that. It's not right for everybody, and you know, I don't want to think that this is an absolute silver bullet and will make you fly later if you sit here and listen to me. But it's just a way to evaluate and manage your risk. If you look at it, you're making an informed management decision. You look at it, weigh all your options, and do nothing. You still made a management decision. You still manage your risk by not doing anything. So just something to look at. It can get a little complicated trying to find exactly which way we're going to go. But there's livestock risk protection for feeder cattle, which are under 600 pounds or from 600 to 900 pounds. Fed cattle heading into the feed yard, lamb, swine. The livestock gross margin takes into account the price of feed and how much feed you're going to have to put into the animal in the feed yard, and that works for dairy, swine, and fed cattle. Not as much LGM used in Wyoming or overall either. It's insuring against unexpected market price declines on that insurance period for that specific type of cattle, and all the market movement is on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. It's not, again, local. You can lock in the price with this product by using the LRP. Again, there's no basis adjustment or local price considered. So I'd say that many times just so that you don't call me next fall and say, well, John, I locked in $1.50, and, well, actually at this point you can lock in $1.75, but I locked in $1.75 and I took them to Pays and they sold for $1. Where's my check? Well, you're not going to get a check because the local price is not taken into consideration. That happened. We had one of the first years it happened in South Dakota. There were some people there was a bunch of cattle got into some Russian olives, and they blistered up their mouth real bad, and everybody freaked out. It was foot and mouth, and the market just tanked in the local markets around there. And people, they'd taken all their cattle to town and it sold, but it was way under what they expected, but they bought LRP, but the futures market stayed high. I can't help you. That is what can happen. It's a risk of any market.
So it is more truly like buying a put, in that basically you got this little fake herd of cattle. I mean, it's the herd of cattle on the board, not necessarily for delivery, is what I'm saying. The delivery cattle and the cattle are, it's kind of.
It is separate. In this case though, that you actually have to own the cattle. You have to be able to prove that you own cattle to purchase LRP. So it keeps a speculator out.
So yeah, right, but you show that you own the cattle,
Mm-hmm.
and then you have to show that you sold those cattle.
You do not have to sell them. You can choose to eat them or convert them. If you say you insure steers weight 1, which is under 600 pounds, and then you make a decision to run them as yearlings and take them from 600 to 900 pounds, you can close out that contract, that your LRP contract, get an indemnity on those because of what the market happened. Buy another LRP contract for the cows that would be from 600 to 900 pounds and sell them next summer. You can do that. You can insure your steers or your heifers. In this case, a futures contract, it's all based on steers. There's no margin call involved with an LRP contract versus a futures contract where if something happens, basis moves, you have to pay. You know, they can call you, hey, we need 10 grand deposited now. This doesn't happen. This just goes for this length of time. There's a certain amount of them that are audited through the year that you're going to, through RMA, that if they call up your number, then you have to prove that you have the cattle and prove that what you did with those said cattle. market them, how that works. You can choose to market them any way you want, but by marketing them, say, you put them on the Superior sale, and they are sold at that time, but they're not gonna be delivered. You have a July Superior sale that you put them on, but they won't be delivered till October. Really, then your LRP would be up, if you're looking at your contract insuring your price, in July, not when they're delivered in October, because that price is set already from the next 3 months. Even though you've got them and you're running them and putting weight on them, you're really, those cattle are sold in July. Versus an order buyer that comes out and is gonna, I've got an order to buy them, but they're not gonna take possession, or I don't get a check or anything until later on. Then it's really when they'd be delivered, or if you chose to run them through the yard, you run them through the ring, then it is the date basically when they're sold. When you select this insurance weeks, your insurance period, or a SCE, a specific coverage endorsement, from 13 to 52 weeks, if you sell your cattle within 30 days of the end of that. So right now, when we looked at them yesterday, the 20 weeks is putting us out into April.
13 weeks.
13 weeks
putting us at April.
in April.
Mhm.
So if you sold them, instead of April, you sold them in May, you're still within that 30 days. But you want to keep your agent in the loop as to what you're doing and how you're marketing the livestock.
So it is tied to when you market those livestock, then you take that off the table on that day. It's the CMA's price that day.
Yeah, there is a date. It's the closing period at the end of the week period, and we'll get to an example here in a second. That shows you when they lock those in. Let's see where we at. So you can run a report and determine the cost and when you could lock them in. I'll show you that in a second. This is the weeks. Most of them are probably from 30 to 13 most of the time. The longer period is going to cost you a lot more, to cover that. And they're not always available out to 52 weeks. And again, it's corresponding when the cattle will be sold. Say a January 30 week endorsement would be purchased for cattle for August delivery. And maximum 1,000 head maybe for each coverage period, and 2,000 head per year. So this is how you do it. You submit a one-time application with a livestock insurance agent, the basic policy. It only certain agents are approved to sell livestock insurance. They have to go through special training to be able to do it. I know there's people that do that right here in town, but again, we're not going to tell you which one to go to because that's not what we do. But because everybody's selling. It sounds like a government ease, but they just tell us we absolutely cannot advocate one agent over another. But all the prices are the same. Doesn't matter which agent you go to. Doesn't have to be local. You can deal with somebody that's in Texas and have the cattle here in Wyoming. Not a problem. The application is then submitted to the insurance company for approval. When it's approved, the producer then would purchase the specific coverage endorsement. That locks in the price and the coverage level. It's purchased daily. Lamb is only available on Mondays, and then you can find all that stuff is published through the RMA website. Once you purchase it, then it goes to RMA and it's approved, and then you have coverage on it. And so there's some steps, but you can go through the first steps, go and submit the application, and have the application submitted to the insurance company for approval. You go do that ahead of time, and then you can watch how the market moves. And then decide when you want to pull the trigger to go, okay, today is the day that I want to lock this in. Or you can just let it ride and not lock it in, but again, you've made that risk management decision for your own operation, whether you purchase it or not. So when you purchase that specific coverage endorsement, you're going to determine the amount of number of head. You can insure steers or heifers. You don't have to insure your whole herd. There's no account for death loss, so they take those out. If you normally have, a 2% death loss and you had 100 head, you're going to lose 2 probably. So you wouldn't want to insure a full 100. You want to, have a portion of that. The date and the weight they expect to market, the coverage price, the endorsement length. You have to pay the premium upon purchase. It's different than normal crop. A lot of other crop insurance where you pay at the end a lot of times you're actually paid for the premium after you would receive an indemnity if you're in normal barley coverage or sugar beets or something. And of course, the endorsement is in effect upon receipt of RMA approval. So you receive an indemnity if the actual ending value on the delivery date is lower than the price they locked in, minus premium, minus adjustments for steers or heifers, if they're Brahma influence or dairy influence. Again, the actual live selling price is not considered, and you can sell how you want. Sale barn, video, order buyer, whatever it is. You can sell your heifers to your neighbor as they're gonna go as heifer development, something like that. I mean, it really gives you all the flexibility of how to market those. It's big to know and remember that you can't take an opposite position on the board. So, get an idea that this is a government subsidized put, you would not then go out and get a call on the other side in the futures market as the opposite position.
But now what happens if you just decide to keep them? What if you got some heifers you're growing as feeders, and then you decide you're gonna have them as heifer development for yourself? You just out what you paid?
Not necessarily. At the end of the coverage endorsement, you're making that decision. You're selling them to yourself. You're gonna
Yeah,
buy.
that's what I
But
wondered.
it ends, you tell your agent, say, okay, this is the end of my insurance period, and I've decided to keep them. Okay, you can receive an indemnity on those cattle if there was an indemnity due. They're your cattle, you do with them while you
But
see
it
them.
has to run to the end of that deal.
Well, before you would know what would happen if you get an indemnity. Now, if you have those heifers, and you're planning on selling them in October, it comes around to July, you sell them to me, maybe they're, the 600 to 900 pounds of the heavier yearlings, you're not taking a baby calf off. And you decide to sell them to me because I'm gonna go to heifer development with them. You're out of that, the risk on those cattle at the sale date when you sold them to me, even though it's really 3 months ahead of that. So then you can turn around and come and say, John, I've got this LRP contract on these calves until October. I could sell it to you for 50 cents or $1 a head or whatever it is. Sell that to me. We go through your agent, figure that all out, and then it would be my contract on those cattle. If not, then I'm not sure exactly how it lapses if you sell them way that far ahead of time. If you sell them 3 months ahead of your the end of your
I think
point.
I think it's just out.
You're out. I think it just ends
cancels
at that point. It cancels if you sold them ahead of time and you sold them before the 30-day window of your expected end date.
I think last year they even gave a provision, if you were in a drought area, they allowed you some flexibility if the drought caused your sale.
That was the ownership waiver. You had to own them for 30 days. They did waive that last year because there's so many cattle.
Okay, but I'm still, say my end date is July 1st, and I decide to keep them. Say we sold them at $1.70 or whatever, that's what we protected, and July 1st it's $1.55, and I decided that I wanted to keep them. I still get that 15-cent difference,
Yes.
even though I kept them.
Yes.
But I gotta tell you what.
You can tell the agent what you did,
Oh,
and that this is the plan. I got these cattle and I moved them this way. I've sold them to myself
but then
essentially.
they use the actual end date of the contract.
Correct.
Okay.
Wouldn't they want to keep record too?
Oh, absolutely.
You know, they didn't sell, we decided to keep them for our program, just so that if you are audited, when they come
Yes.
knocking on your door, that you can prove that you have them.
Right.
Or have
Yeah,
ownership
so
of
if you decide to feed your heifers and then you go, man, I'm gonna go ahead and develop these.
Mm-hmm.
If the market's less, you can get that into. If it's more, they're worth more to you.
Right. If it's more, it's, it came in above there, so no indemnity was due. You do it from that you see fit.
Okay, I'm starting to see the light.
Let's see. Okay, fed cattle, we'll skip that. Anybody really interested in the fed cattle portion of it? We could, okay, all right. Well, produced premium can be calculated on the RMA website. The government kicks in 13%. 13 cents for every dollar. We're gonna help pay the premium. The price decreases at lower coverage level, and also change based on endorsement length. So here is how you get to that policy to find out what things are. This is the RMA website again, rma.usda.gov. Left-hand side, popular topics, livestock policies. All the way down, you gotta go all the way down here, and you get to coverage prices, rates, and actual ending values. And this is where you can enter your state, your commodity, the weight. I chose, when I did this last week, set it all up, 17th day of January for Wyoming for feeder cattle, steers weights 1. Weight 1 is under 600 pounds, weight 2 is 600 to 900 pounds. And then you can run, it runs. This gives you the sheet as to, this comes up how it looks. So we're at Wyoming, doesn't matter what county you're in. This is the endorsement link, what was available. It's hidden down over here, 13 to whatever. Feeder cattle, weight 1, the year, the actual expected ending value, and then when the end date would be. So 13 weeks from the 17th day of January is the 18th day of April. You could, they expect those under 600 pound steers to bring $1.62. And then this is what you're gonna look at for coverage. You can cover 99%, 99.8% of that price. Cover it to $1.62.64 instead of $1.62.83. And it's gonna cost you $4.47 a hundredweight. So 4 times 6 is 24, so somewhere in the neighborhood of 25 bucks, 26 bucks is what it would cost you per head to cover that. If you're planning on marketing them in April. This will give you all the way down, if you bought them in that same date, it goes all the way down to 21 week, and from 21 week all the way to 30 week, and all the way to 43 week, which doesn't happen very often. But if your calves have to be on the ground before you can purchase this. So you can't say, well, I've got 150 head of cows and they're bred and I'm gonna lock it in because the price is really good right now. You gotta wait till the calves hit the ground. And then, so if your calves are all on the ground right now, and you're gonna market them at the end of November, or middle of November, 2013, you can lock in, your coverage price is $1.75. That's expected price is $1.75 on those calves. You can cover 91% of them. That'll take you to $1.60, and it'll cost you $2.76 a hundredweight. So 6 times 3 is 18 bucks, roughly 18 bucks, a little less than that, to cover those calves. At this point, if they're alive on the ground. As an example, and there's always the deductible. This is that's the part that, whether it's your car insurance, your home insurance, health insurance, that you're carrying on your own. If you cover at a higher cover level, obviously small deductible, large deductible, lower coverage level. So running this, and I did this in errors. So I looked at it July 2, this is why I knew that date.
That's why you did that
Yeah,
yesterday?
because when we looked at this yesterday, you could, on July 2nd, if your calves are on the ground, your expected ending date, if you're gonna ship them the first day of October, you could have chose 99.7% coverage, 98.4, 97.1, 95.8. And that's gonna give you, they expected it to be $1.68. So your coverage level here at the high level pretty much is $1.68. Lower coverage level, it took it to $1.61. However, it's cost you $5.44 a hundredweight for the high coverage and $2.58 per hundredweight for the lower coverage rate. So half the price for the lower coverage rate. But then that, you have a higher deductible that you're carrying. You've got more risk, more skin in the game. It ended up being $1.57, so which is underneath the coverage price for both of them. We'll run the numbers here to see what you would got. On the higher coverage level, example 1, if you had 99.7% coverage, 100 head, 5.5 weight, expected ending price was $1.68. And you selected a $1.68 basically for your coverage price, and it came in at $1.57. They run the numbers this way: 100 head times 5.5 equals 550 hundredweight, times that by the $1.6809, which is the coverage price. You had $92,000 worth of coverage on those 100 head. The actual ending value was $1.57, so it came in at $86,000. 100% ownership, you're short $5,800. And then this is how they calculate the premium. You have your premium against that 92,000, against the rate, minus the 13%, so it costs you $2,600 total for that 100 head. So gross payment, you picked up $58 per head, but it cost you $26 per head, but you netted, stuck in your pocket, $32.46 per head if you had that scenario.
So you ran that on last year's numbers?
Yep.
Well, I got one for you. You guys were so effective last year, I went ahead and bought it. So it was like the second week of July, that market was falling like a tank.
Mm-hmm.
Called Larry, can't say his name, but
No, you can say his name. It's Larry French. He was here speaking yesterday. I have no problem speaking Larry's name. I just can't tell you to go talk to Larry.
so I called him, he wasn't in the office, the gal explained the deal to me, told me to call back, so I called back. When I finally got a hold of them, we weren't able to purchase that day's premium because it was too late in the day.
Mm-hmm.
So they signed me up for the next day. I'd slipped 2 days pretty hard on the CME,
Mm-hmm.
but basically I thought I was in great shape. And I must have been because I got it at 98%. After that, it was falling so hard they kept dropping the percentages.
Mm-hmm.
3 days after I purchased my policy, they wouldn't even sell the policy, it had dropped so hard.
Yeah, if it falls at the limit 2 days in a row, they shut it off till it stabilizes.
So
They won't sell
I
it.
bought 200 feeder steers at weight 1 and 50 steers at weight 2, highest coverage possible, and I thought I was making Vegas bank, right? So it was at the 13-week policy, took me to the end of October. End of October, the market sucked so bad, I went ahead and elected just to carry them through, which I did. Calculation of the policy came through. It cost me about $6,800 in premium, and I made like $800.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if it took a year that bad to basically break even, how is that worth anything?
Well, you made $800
Yep.
over top of your premium.
Over the top of my premium.
If
I
you
got my
hadn't-
premium back and made $800.
If you hadn't done that, you'd have lost, it cost you $6,800 for the premium, and you made $800, so that's $7,600. You'd have lost that $7,600 completely.
I guess
So it's not a profit source, Boyd. It's not, it's like your house burning down and I'm gonna run out and, oh, I get $250,000 to put in my pocket. Well, yeah, but I'm awful cold because my house just burned down. This is just, that $250,000 is to let you rebuild your house.
Yeah.
This is not to look at it and go, I'm gonna every year put an extra $50 a head in my pocket for profit. This is an insurance against the price moving, which the price always moves. Now, it's always a management decision. This is why I'm trying to tell you guys now, as the calves are starting to drop, to look at this and then make a decision. It says $1.75 is what they're looking at for the calves this fall.
Yeah.
So-
I just thought, I mean, granted, I'll give it to you that I missed, 2/3 days on the maximum I could have locked it in at. But geez, I could have been 2 weeks late and I would have really lost my house.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And that is your decision. I can't crystal ball and call you up. I'm not gonna call everybody and say, Boyd, do it now. That's not what we do.
But you see my concern. My concern is if I bought insurance on a pickup and I totaled the pickup, I would be made whole again. I buy insurance on the calves and the calves drop, what was it, 25–30%?
Well,
I basically just got back to where I was.
But in that example, you are sliding down the interstate sideways on the ice in your pickup. And you pick up the phone and call Larry French,
Yeah.
hey, I need insurance on this pickup right now because I'm about to hit the guardrail. And he locked it in as best he possibly could, but he's not going to give you 100% because you're in the middle of a wreck. Well, the price is dropping on those calves. And the price is dropping on those calves. He can't lock it in as what it was 2 weeks ago because it is what it is now. And that's what it is. I mean, you can't all of a sudden look back and go, geez, my house is on fire. Boy, I should have more coverage on that. Well, you can't do that.
It doesn't work, it doesn't work.
If you compared it to the videos and anything else of that same time frame, we were probably down a good 20 cents at the time my policy ended versus when I locked it in. So I would have thought 20 cents on that many calves, I mean, you're talking $30,000.
Yeah,
So why?
But
the difference?
it's not live cattle, it's not what the video sold for, it's not what your
Yeah.
calves went for, it pays, it's what the CME entered for.
Yeah.
And vice versa happened, and I heard it in the conversation yesterday, of a guy right here in Powell was exact vice versa. The market was falling, he got an indemnity from that, because the market fell, and he was in a sweetheart deal of some sort and picked up an extra 15 cents a pound on the other end, and put them both in his pocket. He looks like he's a rocket scientist. So it can happen the other way. But when the wreck is on, it's pretty hard to stop and go, I need more insurance yesterday because my house burnt down last night. We can't help you on that. This is giving you the tool and giving you the ability to research it and make the decision now. And, there is my 20/20 vision and backwards is always really good, but forward is always really fuzzy.
Right, but it seemed like, and from what Larry said, I mean, we almost hit the best time to buy. We were a little late, but not very much.
But you didn't lose that 7,600, you picked up an extra 800.
Yeah, I
So-
agree. I mean, it was assurance, but it wasn't.
But it's not a profit source either. It's not to make you more than whole. At any point in any of this insurance, even your home insurance, your car insurance, isn't going to make you more than whole. If you're gonna spend a lot of money and overinsure yourself, so that when I wreck my 7-year-old pickup, they're gonna buy me a brand new pickup. No, they're gonna insure that 7-year-old pickup at the price, the value of what it is. Even though it's gonna cost me more than that to go out and replace it, well, they replace it at the value of that pickup, at the time that I have insurance on it.
Yeah, I guess I look at it differently though, because to get back to what I expected to have in July before that deal tanked, I had to keep those calves clear till 3 weeks ago and put all the feed in them to get right back to the same price.
That's your management decision. And it's not ever gonna make you more than whole, so that's not the point.
I just thought it didn't work as well as I expected it to on that kind of a market, because when have we had that kind of a market slide? To go back to September 11th to find out.
It happened in September 11th, it happened with the BSE cow, it happened with a lot of other stuff too. I mean, it's the market can slide.
Yeah.
I don't know how far, this is just another one at the lower coverage level. Running the numbers, same type of deal, but because you're at 95% coverage level, that gives you the lower coverage price of $1.61. So you're insuring 88,000. It ended up at 86,000. It cost you, or you're short 22,000. The lower coverage level cost you 1,200. So a total on the dollars is $22 per head gross. It cost you $12 per head, so you netted $9 a head. Versus at the higher coverage level, it cost you more, but you had upfront pay $2,600 instead of paying $1,200, and you have to do it at the time of purchasing the coverage. Make sense? No?
Yeah, that makes sense. Now this you can buy at any time?
This you can buy at any
You don't
time.
have to be signed up before like that other.
Nope, it's continuous policy. So I would encourage you, if you're looking at it, even if you're just interested in it, go talk to the agent, get the paperwork done ahead of time, and then become a best friend of that website, looking at where the price is. It's announced, what time is it, Tara, when they announce it? It's every afternoon.
It's after the market's closed.
After
so
the
here
market's
it would be
closed,
like
so-
2 or 9, it'd be like 3.
It's afternoon when the price is, and you have to lock it in. You've got just a window to lock it in. If they start trading for the next day, then you can't buy it. You've got to do it. It's evening to morning. We don't sell it. You guys sell it. So
We generally try to ask that if you're gonna think it over during the night, to at least get a hold of us by no later than 6:30, so we can get on the computer, just in case we have any computer glitches, because I think it's 9 o'clock Eastern time, so we have to have it done by 7 here.
So when you say you can buy it at any time, the calves actually have to be on the ground, don't they?
yeah, yes, and you have to have the calculator.
Generally not, but we're not opposed to handing out personal phone numbers, and get on it.
So you just look out and say you got a 26-week deal, you look for the CME contract 26 weeks out, that's the number you're looking at.
That you're looking at the number that's
Oh, like,
This number here.
Oh,
When you
that.
go to this website here, and you're looking at, it's reported, see right here, when, these ones aren't closed yet, for 30 weeks from July 2nd, 2012. 30 weeks, the ending period is, well, I guess it is then next week, January 28th. So you could have purchased, deliver your under 600 pound calves, the end of January. You could have locked in the $1.72 is your expected ending value. Your coverage price was $1.69. It would have cost you in that $5 a hundredweight category.
what happens when you jump categories?
If they're heavier,
Yeah, I start out with like 400 pounds and they end up 700 pounds, it's between categories.
you missed it pretty big. It's what you expect to sell them at. So if you're expecting to sell 400 pound calves,
Oh, you're just going with what you're expecting. 6 to 9 is
there's under 600 pounds and there's from 600 to 900 pounds. So if you're, well, in my outfit, if they get to be, I mean, they're 5.5 weight calves. That's kind of what I expect to get be under 600 pound calf. I'm on irrigated ground, they might be 700 pounds, but I kind of expect them to be under 6. But if you're running a mainly Coriander bunch of cows, you're not expecting to ship 900 pound calves in the fall, so you kind of know what you're going to hit.
I see.
So that's where you're looking at it.
So my next question is, when they realized I was due a payment, they send you an envelope saying you have to respond within 2 weeks and sign all this stuff off or else you won't get paid.
Yeah,
What's that about?
That's how you get paid.
That seems like I hope you don't get the envelope deal.
No, they'll follow up on that to make, if you don't respond, I mean, they're gonna, but I don't, you have to talk to your agent about the particulars of getting paid. We don't do that side of it. If you have problems with that, we're the complaint department, so you contact us and we try to ferret out what happened, but, that's the process, the steps you gotta follow.
But you contact Tara, right? She's the
Yes,
complaint
please,
department.
please. They're feeding everybody lunch right now. If you guys wanna go to lunch, you're sure more than welcome to, if you wanna sit here and argue.